I never believed in ghost stories. To me, they were just tales spun by people who read too many horror stories or watch too many scary movies. But all of that changed when I moved into Hollow Heights apartment on the outskirts of New York City. The apartment was cheap, far cheaper than other rentals in the area. As a student with a tight budget, I didn't think twice. The building was old, with faded red bricks and corridors that smelled damp. But who cared? I just needed a place to sleep and study. On my first night there, I started to feel something strange. As soon as I turned off the lights, I heard whispers. They were faint, as if coming from the walls. I ignored them, assuming it was just my imagination after a long day of unpacking. But night after night, the sounds became clearer. Not just whispers, but also dragging footsteps in the corridor, soft knocking on the walls, and even the occasional faint laughter. I tried to ignore them, but I couldn't. One night, around 2 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of scratching outside my apartment door. It was as if something was dragging its nails against the wooden surface. Heart pounding, I peeked through the peephole. Outside, a woman stood there. Her face was pale, her eyes empty. Her unkempt hair hung over part of her face. Her long, thin hands pressed slowly against my door. I froze, unable to move or even breathe. After what felt like an eternity, the woman suddenly lowered her head until her mouth was right at the peephole. Her lips moved, as if whispering something silently. I stepped back, gasping. Cold sweat dripped down my forehead. I didn't dare open the door. I shut my eyes and tried to block out the sounds until exhaustion eventually pulled me into sleep. The next morning, I asked my neighbor, an elderly man who had lived in the apartment for years. "Ah, you saw her too?" He said flatly, "That's Mrs. Hollow. She used to live in the farthest unit. Killed herself about 30 years ago, but her spirit never left. She's still looking for her lost child." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I couldn't stay there any longer. That night, I packed my belongings and moved to a friend's house. When I returned the next day to pick up the rest of my things, I found something that made my blood run cold. On my door, there were handprints. Long, thin, and pitch black, as if burned into the surface. And right below them, carved sharply into the wood, were the words, "Help me."